Working for you. A weekly talk radio program which highlights developments of national interest and the activities of your St. Kitts Nevis government. Join host Roy Williams as he presents news, views, reports, and interviews about everything regarding the activities of the Team Unity government and the building of our communities and the development of St. Kitts Nevis. Tune in and call in to interact with your government and share your views regarding the upward forward development of your community and our beautiful Twin Island Federation. Working for You is weekly, every Wednesday live from 1:30 p.m. to 3 p.m. on ZIZ Radio, Win FM, and Sugar City FM with rebroadcast on participating stations. Working for You.
Good afternoon, and I welcome you to another edition of Working for You. Thank you very much for tuning in to today's program. We appreciate your company very much. Today we are going to be speaking about a very important topic, and that is teacher training and education. It is very, very important that our students learn in an environment that they can be productive, that when they leave the classroom, that they're able to apply what they would have learned, their skills and the knowledge that they would have acquired. And so today, we will be discussing that. And I have with me some very competent persons on my panel. And I am going to start introducing them from my left. Mr. Gairy Knight, who is a lecturer at the Clarence Fitzroy Bryant College. Welcome to this program.
Thank you.
Mrs. Joycelyn Archibald-Pennyfeather, who is the Dean of the Faculty of Teacher Education. Welcome to this program at the CFBC.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. It's a pleasure to be here.
And Professor Dr. Joel Warrican, who is at the UWI Open Campus. And then I have Eustace Davoren, who is a teacher.
Yes, thanks for having me.
Okay, so we have all educators here on our panel. Now, we are going to jump right in to the discussion. Teacher education and training cannot be underscored enough today in the field of education. Why is this so important? Professor Warrican.
Okay, thank you for having me, Mr. Williams, and good afternoon to the listening public. Teacher education is of paramount importance because the foundation of a society is really about education. What we see in our society is a reflection of our education system. The quality of living with education, I think I always say it is the only sure way of ensuring that you have quality life, that you have a good living without getting into a dishonest way of making a living. And when I think about education, I am not thinking about education only from a formal sense, because there are many people who are very successful in life and their education goes beyond what happens in a classroom.
Yes.
But for the sake of this discussion, let's keep it to what it's in the classroom. What we do with our teachers affects what happens to our young people. If you want to eliminate crime, you have to tackle the issue in the classroom. You cannot, if you turn out children who are not prepared for life, then life will get the better of them. And that's what we see happening in many of our Caribbean states. So we have to think about what happens at the training college, and then we have to see the trickle-down effect into the classroom by the teachers, and then see how it affects the students. So in all of the discussion, we have to keep as paramount the whole notion of quality, because quality is the answer. It is not just putting bums on seat. It is a matter of having quality teaching, quality learning, and that will have quality product.
Good. Now, so teachers are extremely important
Most important.
to the learning process.
Yes. Well, teachers in society, when I say most important, I have been a teacher from the time I left secondary school. It's my passion. But teachers are, in my opinion, the most, it's not maybe the best thing to categorize people, but teachers are most important to our society. In terms of the learning process, in this modern dispensation and in a global and technological space, I think that students are as important as teachers because we learn from each other. You do not go into a classroom as a teacher these days and think that you are the font of knowledge, that you know everything, because quite often the students know more than you, and they are technologically advanced. They have their fingertips on all the information out there, and while you are, if you're a little bit old-fashioned, while you're there going through a book and so forth, they Google and up comes the information and they're able to do it. The thing is, what do you do as a teacher now? The role must be changed with all that knowledge out there. So the teacher becomes a facilitator, right? Becomes a person who knows how to bring the best out of students, how to take those students and the knowledge they're getting from through the technology, now to become analytical, not to accept anything that is out there. How do you assess it? How do you then make sure that the source is credible? How do you make the best use of that information? In so doing, they cannot be hoodwinked, because everybody these days have a story to tell. Everybody has something to say, and quite often it is a fake story. How do you make sure that you keep, as a youngster, that you keep respecting an adult, but at the same time you question what that adult is saying, and not just taking their words as gospel, because you need to be analytical. That's what we have to teach our students, how to decipher wrong from right, how to take information and make the best use of it, and how to make the best decision from it. And decision making is key to what happens in our society. Everything is based on decision making the right decision.
For my experience teaching at the college, sometimes you get a batch of students that have come to a system where they're learning by rote. And so you have some difficulty in getting them to think critically. And thinking critically should not start at the college level. Should start much earlier, even in the home.
Oh, definitely. Well, it's what you're saying goes to the heart of what I'm saying. I mean, it's really about critical thinking, and the old rote learning. It really, we can't throw out the baby with the bathwater. It is not to say there's no place for rote learning. There are some things that you have to commit to memory.
Yes.
Right? Let's be clear on that. But generally speaking, even as you commit that to memory, learning is about what do you do with it. A learned person, an educated person is a person who can take the information that they have, the knowledge that they have, and make the best decisions with it, be analytical about it, and so forth. So even though in some cases there might be a place for rote, it is ultimately to do what? To be analytic with it, to make decisions with it, and so forth. But again, in this globalized space and technological space, the notion of learning by rote is not obsolete. But if we're not careful, that's where it's going to be, because every single thing you want, once you have access to a cell phone, it's like you're walking around with an encyclopedia of knowledge. So you can get access to information, but information alone is not enough. It is about the critical decisions you make from it. So it comes back to critical learning, critical thinking, critical reasoning. Anyhow you look at critical, that's what it comes down to ultimately help you to make the right decisions in life.
Right, to be able to assess that information.
Yes.
To see if it's reliable and all of that, as you correctly said. Now, there has always been a debate about teaching. And is it a profession? Have you ever heard that question?
Yes.
Is it a profession? Mrs. Pennyfeather.
Well, good afternoon again, once again. In response to your question, Mr. Williams, I would like to say that I do uphold the teaching as a profession. And I do think that all of the teachers out there would say the same as me. However, the debaters would say that where is your code of ethics that you are bounded by? Or where are your professional standards that you are bounded by? They would make comparisons with the medical field, and they would indicate that, okay, in the medical field they have so and so, so where is yours? But for me, as an educator who started quite some time ago, I have been hearing the debate for a long time, and every time I hear the debate, it's always the same thing. And personally for me, it is a profession. And what I would like to say today is that I must commend the Ministry of Education for taking a step towards professionalizing the profession. And they are working on that as we speak. Persons who would have heard the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Education, Mr. Hodge, speak, he would have alluded to the fact that they are presently working on that professionalizing of the profession, so that we can be recognized, in particularly here in St. Kitts, even abroad, as a community of persons who are professionals in our own right. So we are professionals.
Okay, and given that, what role does professional development play in the teaching profession? You've described it as a profession.
Professional development. It is, the role is for capacity building. What we have found though is that one of the main hindrances, or what should I say, the main challenges that we have is offering professional development to our teachers. It is one of the problems that we have found, not just here in St. Kitts. And I said this to say that when we did our own analysis here at the college, the Teacher Education Division that is, we found that we didn't do enough professional development. In the wider region, in the OECS, it has also been found that enough professional development is not being done to promote the standards and our teachers in terms of helping them to upgrade. And so earlier this year, the first teaching professional development session was held by the OECD or EDMU in St. Lucia. That was the very first one to promote professional development and to look at some of the challenges that the teachers are facing in the region.
Is it that teachers are resisting professional development because they feel that, you know, they know enough, or that this is not for me, or it's taking up my time, or what is going to be outcome of it?
All of the above. But I would let Dr.
Or is it that, what is it that I need to do any sort of ongoing formation? Why do I have to be involved in ongoing formation? I think I have enough that I can go on.
Yeah, well, this is a very interesting question, because all professions that I know that are successful, professional development forms a strong part of their way of being, because there should always be continuous learning. And I like to think about professional development for teachers as continuing and professional development. So it sends the message that when you train, it doesn't end there, that is just a starting point, you know. When you become a teacher, it is like a laddered profession. You keep adding, you keep going up the rungs, and you keep adding. And times are changing, technology is changing. What we knew as knowledge yesterday is no longer adequate today, you know, so that you have to move with it. And the way to do that is to have continuing professional education. Now, to all credit to all the ministries of education in the region, they have always embarked on a set of programs in professional development education. So, for example, in the summers, there are always workshops. That's part of professional development education. They send people on short courses and so forth. But to me, the bigger and better question should be, is it enough? And that is where we have to delve into. So I have done a number of workshops around the region for ministries of education, working with teachers. There's hardly a country in the region that I go in and a teacher don't recognize me because I've come to the classroom and I've done that. But I think what is really lacking in this part of the process is that it's one thing when you go to a workshop and then you have to go back to your classroom. I say there's a gap in between there. So one time I worked on a project called the Caribbean Center of Excellence for Teacher Education Project, and that was coming out in partnership with USAID and the Schools of Education at Moan and Clayfield. And what we did, we said we are going to do a series of professional education for teachers, but we're going to do it differently. Yes, there will be times when they come into the space for a workshop, but for the most times, we went to them in their schools. Mm-hmm. And so if teachers are having problems in the school about planning lessons, we hold their hands and we show them, we demonstrate to them, we model how to plan the lesson. And I like to get into the classroom. So it is not like me speaking from above and just saying, you plan a lesson by doing X, Y, Z. You execute it by doing X, Y, Z. I would help them to plan, so we're planning together. And then I go to the classroom and I model the lesson. So professional development takes on a different mode. You now have a helping community where you're not leaving the teacher on their own. Because quite often, a teacher comes to a workshop organized by the Ministry of Education. The facilitator is excellent, but they have to go back to that place from which they came in the first place. So if it was a difficult environment, having learned all of this, yes, there is a saying in education that the environment is more powerful than the individual.
Yes.
So you go back to that very tough environment with all your great ideas, and you're surrounded by teachers who are saying, why would we do this? You know, this is not the way. Why these kids, and you blame the kids, they blame the parents, they blame everybody. But if there's somebody in that environment that along with the knowledge gain is helping them to implement it, mm-hmm, success is, the possibility of success is greater. So I'm saying continuing on professional education, but in teaching, you need a helping community. So you need to have coaches and mentors to help.
Good. And that leads me to Eustace. As a young man, as a young teacher, recently trained and so on, what support have you found in the teaching community? Going into the classrooms, issues of classroom management and the implementation of new ideas and innovative ways of doing things. How do you see technology playing, for example, an important role in you imparting to the students what you have to impart?
All right, thanks for having me again. Well, I recently left Teachers College, the most recent, like maybe 2 months ago. So, but I have had the chance to return to school already, so I can speak on that. Like Dr. Warrican alluded to about professional development and the change in education education is dynamic and there is change. As you spoke to technology, these set of students that we have currently in school, they are in the technological age. They were born with technology. As young as they were months, they're in their mother's hand, and mommy has a telephone, so they see this light glittering in their eyes and so forth. So they are technological students. I feel, however, because that is the issue right now, the environment hasn't changed much. And Dr. Warrican is saying that the individual, but you have a greater environment, a stronger environment. The environment is still somewhat archaic in the classroom. There is not much that lends itself to the use of technology. And I feel, I implore the ministry and the others to come on board with the technology. The internet is a problem in the classrooms, in the school. When we speak to technology and integrating technology in the classroom, it's not really about the teacher going into the classroom and just using technology, but it's really about the teacher and the students using technology. Let us bring technology into this lesson. Have the students with their laptops, have them have access to the internet, and let me show them how to find information on the internet, how to read information, content information, and we can actually assess the information. This is where critical thinking comes in, because in the classroom now the children have access to the internet, I have access to the internet, and we are going through, we are questioning what authors would have written, we are challenging information, we are thinking critically in the classroom. But I feel that support, maybe the intent is there, but it's not being manifested in the schools as we speak. So that's a big setback as it relates to technology. Also, I feel the other support is there from some of the teachers, the principals, the ministry, but you're not seeing it manifested.
Right. Good. Now, Mr. Knight, you teach in the teacher division, teacher education division at the college, and I am sure that sometimes what you see as a lecturer teaching teachers is that the very same problems that they complain about the students who they have are the very same problems that you're seeing in them as students. How do you deal with that?
See, part of the importance of the development of the teachers to be the development, their individual development, and it also has to do with their perception of what their purpose is as a teacher. When they come into the teacher training program, what do they expect the outcome to be? And part of it is whether they are, coming back to the debate about whether it's a profession or not. They have to determine for themselves, is it a career or is it a job? Because if they see it as a career and then they will understand the importance of their continued professional development. If they're doing it really to get the increments in their salary, their summer vacations, their spring vacations, their Christmas vacations, it means that they're not going to go beyond that. One of the things I try to explain to them all the time is that they should not allow themselves to just become a statistic in the society. And that therefore, when they're in the classroom, they should be also putting that same notion over to their students. You don't want to just go to the motion. You go to school because your parents send you to school. You get the subjects, you come out, you get a job, and that's the end of the day. They must see the big picture. What is their purpose as teachers as being the most important profession in the society, because it lends itself to the development of the society, sustainable development, so that as they themselves see are guiding themselves to become more professional and to develop a career, they also must put the notion to the students that they cannot just be an ordinary person in the society. They must see their purpose in the society for the development of the individual, the development of the community, the development of the country. So if they can take that notion and drive it forward, starting with themselves, that is what would make a big difference.
I like that idea that you mentioned. It's not just a career. I like the word vocation because it comes from the Latin vocare, which means it's a calling, that you have a calling. Because if you don't have the passion in terms of what you do, how can you spark that passion in your in those who you teach?
Right.
So that is a challenge.
And
You know.
as Eustace was commenting also about the use of the technology, accessing the information, and as you said, there's just so much information out there. But what do you do with that information? It's there, you can access it. But I like to try to make a distinction always between being educated and being intelligent, because being intelligent means applying that data,
Yes.
applying what you have learned. Because you can have a wealth of information, but then it's of no use to you if you're not able to apply it. And unfortunately, even some of the subject matters that we see being taught, the students, they gather as much information as necessary so that they can pass the exam. But at the end of the day, after passing, sometimes with a distinction, there's
The
nothing that they can,
applicability.
the ability to use it, right, it doesn't happen.
Yeah, there has been no transfer of that knowledge from the head to,
Right.
to reality, really. Now, Dr. Warrican, you are here in the Federation, of course, for a particular reason. And I know that the Masters of Education program is being proposed here in St. Kitts and Nevis. Can you tell us more about this?
Right, thank you. I will backtrack a little bit.
Sure.
So the School of Education have a number of programs that we offer, and we have always had great partnership with all the colleges in the Eastern Caribbean and certainly here in St. Kitts. The School of Education has a mandate to serve the Eastern Caribbean, the teacher education body in the Eastern Caribbean. And somewhere along the line, there is a general feeling that over the years, we haven't strayed from the mandate, but that we have not fulfilled the mandate, that we are not meeting the needs of enough of our educators. So, in recent discussion with the OECS Commission and with the Joint Board of Teacher Education, that's the teachers' colleges, the ministries of education, the teachers' union, and the School of Education in the Eastern Caribbean, we decided that we have to find a way to open access to as many teachers as possible. So even though we're talking about the masters, we need to backtrack and talk about some other programs. So, for example, the bachelors in education, we have made the decision that each college in the Eastern Caribbean should be able to offer the bachelors, should take control of the bachelors in education and offer it at home, at their college, with the campus, the KFIL campus, the School of Education, just acting as a sort of quality assurance mechanism. Also, for those people who already have a degree in a content area like linguistics or mathematics or science and teaching in the schools, but are not teacher trained, we have also agreed that they should be able to access the diploma in education, as is already done in St. Kitts, again on a franchise basis. So again, the college takes control of it and we serve as quality assurance. So we are bringing, our intention is to take all the programs that we have and bring them to the community.
Yes.
So for those two, the college takes control of those. It's almost as if it's their program, with us just giving some quality assurance mechanism. In terms of the master's degree, at a totally different level, we have said we do not want to deprive the citizens of St. Kitts of the opportunity to do a master's. If you look at any given year at KFIL campus in the School of Education, you're just going to have maybe 1 or 2 persons from the profession here coming to do a master's.
Yes.
Sometimes 0. We want to change that. So we have made the decision that when we wrote to all the colleges, that we are giving them the opportunity to partner with us, as they have been good partners over the years, that we will come and we will offer the masters on the ground. And we'll do it in such a way that we're helping to build capacity at the college. So we could beam live to students, but we're not taking that approach. or we could come and rent our own space and run the masters, but we're not taking that approach. We're taking the approach that we have always had a good and reliable partner in the college.
Okay.
So let us come and let us work together to deliver that masters. And the way in which we'll do it, we will have tutors from the college and from the community ministry and so forth, who will teach under the guidance of somebody from KPhil. So at KPhil, there'll be somebody responsible for the program. Everything that the student at KPhil gets, the student in St. Kitts will get it also, because we'll use our learning space, our online learning space, going back to the technology,
Yes.
and you post it there for the students to access it. But better yet, that you have a discussion site so that the students can have that discussion and interface with a student in St. Vincent, a student in Dominica, and so forth. So that's the concept behind it, bringing the masters to the teachers and to the principals so that they have access to the same thing that the Barbadian students have. Right now there's a general feeling that the School of Education is serving more a Barbadian populace. And we want to move away from that, because this is what we call the Eastern Caribbean Joint
Yes.
Board. It's a geographical joint board. So one party can't be getting
Sure.
all of it. So we want to meet the needs of the Eastern Caribbean. We have a principal who is from Grenadian by birth, Professor Udine Barito, and she is really keen on us reaching out to the OECS and making sure that our OECS citizens, I'm from St. Vincent and the Grenadines, our OECS citizens get the best of the education that the University of the West Indies has to offer. We already have the open campus here, and they're doing quite a great job with online programs. But you know what? It's not everybody that wants to do online. There are those who happily will do the online, and there are those who want to do the face-to-face.
Right.
And we are going to give the best, a marriage of the two. So face-to-face predominantly, but online support. Yep.
Now, while I taught at the Clarence Fitzroy Bryant College, I enrolled in the program which is offered through Cave Hill as well, the postgraduate diploma in
Secondary education.
yes, specializing in English.
Right.
What advantage is there for those who have gone through that program, entering into the master's program? Is it going to be a shorter time for them, having done the action research and all of that?
Right. Well, that's an extremely good question. We are in the process now, recognizing that, in my opinion, has been a sort of deficiency. So as we speak, we are developing what we call a master's in teaching. So you have specialized in English, so it will be a master's in teaching English.
Yes.
So what will happen, all the courses that you have done will contribute to that master's in teaching English, and what you'll just have to do is a top up to get your master's.
Okay.
Right? So we are hoping that by the end of the semester we would have that program in place. It's not a new program to the university, because at Mona they have gone ahead as the forerunners, and that's exactly what they do. But in terms of the masters that we are offering here, in this case, we're going to be offering a master's education in literacy studies, which is not English. It
Sure.
is maybe a subset of English, but
Right.
not right. So it is like a new area. We are also offering the masters in educational leadership, and we don't have a DPED in educational leadership. And we are offering a masters in school counseling, again a new area. And school counseling, I think, is particularly important with all the ills that we see among some of our young people, which I keep saying, we know we like to berate them and to blame them and so forth, but we have to put structures in place to help them. So what we are doing is to offer this masters in school counseling to our teachers, that they would be able to offer the pastoral care right within the classroom that the students need. In terms of the educational leadership, a school is as good as its leader, so that we can have all the ideas in the school, if a leader cannot execute it, we are in trouble. So we want to make sure that we have strong school leaders. And by school leaders, we're not just talking about principals. We're talking about senior teachers and so forth. And then the literacy program. That goes without saying. The foundation of everything education is literacy. Can you read? Can you write well? And so forth. Can you think critically? Because literacy goes now beyond the notion of just reading and writing. When we talk literacy now, we're talking about critical thinking. We call it a critical pedagogy, critical literacy. And it goes to the digital side of things. And, you know, listening to Eustace speak about the technology. In education now, we say that the children, they are digital natives. They were born with the technology as almost part of their being. But the teachers, for the most part, are digital immigrants.
Yes.
You know? So how literacy is going to help to bridge that gap? You know? How do you get a child to read? And when we say read, not just read in the traditional sense. So read in the traditional sense, but also interfacing with the technology in that critical way that we want them to. Because they're very okay on the technology. But what do they do with it? What use do they put it to? How do they make their decisions from it? How do they know when they hear somebody on television make some statements and it sounds very pretty and the person is quite eloquent, but it is really empty or lying or fake, whatever? How do they do that? So the 3 programs we have decided to start with, we thought about them with the notion of meeting particular needs. But we're not stopping there. We have a suite of programs that we want to bring to the people of St. Kitts. We want to work for the people, working for you. You know? So special education, the Ministry of Education has already inquired about that. So we want to come with not just special education for the teachers who teach in the special schools, but right in our regular schools, we have so many children who are falling through the crack. How do we help them? You know, how do we assess their learning needs? How do we put the necessary program to help them? These are the things we're thinking about. But if you keep these programs at K-Phil, you have to ask yourself, how many teachers are going to access them?
Yes.
And even if you put it online, how many teachers will do it? There's some who will happily do it, but many are deterred from online for the same notion of digital natives versus digital immigrants.
I am happy that you mentioned that the digital natives versus the digital immigrants, because I was first made aware of that by a student when I was at the college who was doing his internal assessment, and it was about digital natives and digital immigrants, and that is how I was made aware of it. So here it is that I was in the classroom, but I was learning from a student.
That is why, Sir Williams, the dynamics of the classroom has to change. So it goes back to my early statement about importance. The importance of the teacher as that top person within the classroom space is a falsity. It is not so. The teacher is important, so it is not denying the importance, but the teacher has to recognize that in this new modern global technological education space, that the learner is equally important, because the teacher has to learn from the student, and the student has to learn from the teacher. So they're both learners in that space. And if a teacher can step back from his or her ego and say, you know, I may know this, but my students are technologically advanced and can help me to find a safe space for my kids to learn, you'll get much more. I have a PhD student, if I could just say a little bit more, who looked at a concept called the third space. And it is premised on the fact that the child operates in what she calls the first space, their home language, the Creole, but the awareness of the technology, the use of the technology, being quick to do their blogs and get on Google and do whatever. versus the second space, which is the formal classroom, and that there's a gap between that first space and that second space. And if schools do not find a way to bridge that gap, we're losing generations of children. And she called that gap, bridging that gap, the third space.
Right. I think you've touched on quite a mouthful there. How do you negotiate power in the classroom?
Exactly.
And the whole thing about a democratic classroom.
Yeah.
Democracy in the classroom. How do you negotiate power in the classroom, Mr. Davoren?
Well, I am happy that you mention democracy in the classroom. As I look over my
because
my
we can
democracy
have
lecture.
systems that are very
Yes.
authoritarian.
I think and I just want to highlight the importance of being trained and going to teachers ed, because I learned the importance of democracy in the classroom. I mean, before it was my classroom, it's my show. You are here, I run this thing, so just sit down and cool. That kind of behavior I would put on in the classroom. But as I went to teachers ed, and my eyes were open more to what democracy is all about in the classroom. And this takes me back to something I read. A particular author would say that democracy is hinged on shared decision making in the classroom. When you have a classroom and you can employ the ideas of the students, you can take what they are saying, you allow these students to make choices, make decisions in the classroom. Students are more enthused to learn. Students want to learn more. They feel that they contribute more to the classroom setting, contribute more to the learning process. If I give a student, let's take mathematics for example, and I'm teaching a particular concept, I'm saying this is the way the concept must be taught. You have to answer the question this way, versus students saying, oh, Mr. Davoren, I have a different way of doing this. I have a different slant where you can answer this question. And I say, wow. And I take that student's recommendation and I follow through with that. The student is now empowered. The student takes control of his or her learning because he or she had the chance to make a decision that I am going to answer this question this certain way. So I feel that democracy in the classroom is very important, and teachers should not just see democracy as giving students power, but see it as empowering students to take control of their
but so
learning
the shared decision making though must lead to the desired learning outcomes.
Yes.
Because if not, then the shared decision making,
then it becomes chaotic. It becomes
precisely
chaotic.
because it's not everything that you will agree to.
Of course.
You see, Dr. Warrican, you mentioned something about teachers learning about pastoral care and counseling and all that sort of thing and applying it in the classroom. Well, some teachers will tell, isn't that for the priest? Isn't that for the psychologist or the psychiatrist? This is placing an additional burden on us. We're here to teach, and that's it. We're not here to counsel. We're not here to offer any sort of a pastoral care. Let the student go where they should get to that.
Well, it goes back to the whole notion of teaching as a profession. And this is where that debate about teaching as a profession is an old debate, but that is because they're trying to apply other professions' principles to education. Education is like nothing else. So that when you decide to be a teacher, that's why it's good when you have care. I mean, we call it passion, but the literature talks about it as care. The strongest predictor for good teacher is care for people, care for children, what we call passion. If you have care for your students in the classroom, you cannot just think about their academics, because there's something else affecting them why they're not doing well. When a child walks into class today and they've had some problem at home, if you cannot find a way to appease that child, to help that child, you're going to have a morning where that child is not thinking about what you're trying to teach. So we're not asking them to become the counselor. We're asking them to take on some responsibility for being a helping personality in the classroom. Of course, that is the same teacher who might then have to recommend the student goes to the council.
And to be able to detect certain things.
Yes. But you really have to have that care, because if not, you're going to be in the classroom and you're going to say, I'm here to teach math, and you're going to teach math only, and you're teaching to a set of students who are really distracted and somewhere else.
Like some teachers, as Mr. Knight mentioned, were only doing it for the financial outcomes. Right. Now that leads me to our dean, because there is a teacher programs that are being offered at the CFBC, and this has been going on. So there's ongoing training and education at the Clarence, Fitzroy, Bryant College. Now, what are some of the programs that are offered there?
We offer 5 programs at the college. We have the early childhood education, the associate degree in early childhood, which started in 2013.
And that is done through the University of the West Indies, all of the programs?
Yes, all of the programs. They are all franchised by the University of the West Indies, and we are grateful for that. We also have the primary and the secondary program, associate degrees as well. We have the secondary regular, which has students who major and minor in a particular area of specialization. And then we have the secondary TVET, students who can do TVET in industrial arts or home management. And then we have the postgraduate in secondary education, which is one of the most recent programs that we added. That program lasts for just under 1 year, or 1 year. We give it 1 year.
Intense.
It's an intense program, as you very well said, and you yourself are a product of that program. We also have Mr. Knight here, who did the program, and both of you can speak to the intensity of the program. But it is a program which I do believe the students, when they have finished, would have said that they are amazed at the things that they would have learned, because some of the things that they would have done in the classrooms as graduate teachers, their expectations were sort of shut afterwards, because they recognized that some of the things were not the right things. And so when they did the program, they were able to really experience what a teacher should be doing in the classroom.
Yes. Now, we have had a sort of a paradigm, a model in St. Kitts, where people fresh out of high school go into the teaching profession, into the classroom. There is some talk about that being changed, and that before you go into the classroom, you must be trained. Now, could you tell me, perhaps, Dr. Warrican, being in this profession for so long, the advantages of being trained before you go into the classroom? And maybe there are some advantages too from having some experience and then getting trained, because you bring that training with you to the... So, could you speak a little bit to that?
Yes, I know sometimes in the Caribbean we like to condemn the things that we have and think it's bad practice. And I think I like how you frame the question, because is it advantageous, is it disadvantageous, or whatever. So just to say that this is something that over the years in the UK, a lot of what we do in the Caribbean, we modeled rightfully or wrongfully from the UK. And you can still find areas in the UK, especially there are times when there are shortage of teachers and so forth, where they recruit people without training, teacher training. And they have a pathway for them to get their training while they are practicing. Yes. Now, that has several advantages. When you have worked in a classroom before you get your teacher training, you have something to anchor your training to. The disadvantage is that sometimes you have developed such bad habits that it's not easy to erase the bad habits. So we have to always look at situations, context. Many of the islands of the Caribbean, especially the Eastern Caribbean, are not yet at the point where we can demand that everybody is trained before. Yes. And this is the reality of the situation. So what do? If we're going to take teachers in, which we have to without the training, what we have to ensure is that there's a system in the school of mentoring and coaching and proper supervision. I think that is what we have to ensure. And the ministry will then say, okay, if you come in without being teacher trained, that by X time, you must enroll in a teacher education program. So it is the structures you put in place with that system. Now, I have seen people who have come into the classroom, who have done it the so-called right way, who have been trained first and they come into the classroom. And in some cases, they're excellent teachers. But I've also seen quite a bit who come in with their training.
And what disasters.
And they're disasters. So I'm saying it is really what happens in the classroom is dependent on several things. It is dependent, first of all, on what you were saying, the individual have to take a certain level of responsibility for themselves. But it also takes into consideration the level of supervision that you have in a school. Do you just have a principal? Do you have a principal who sees themselves just as a principal rather than as a person who's an instructional leader, who makes sure that they go into classrooms and see that the teachers have that support that is needed to deliver well. And where the principal does not have the instructional knowledge for that particular subject. So a principal might be at a secondary school, he's trained as an English teacher, but he has to manage everybody in the school. Can he help a math teacher? Maybe not in some things, but he can be strong enough, be comfortable in his own skin to say, I am appointing you as senior teacher so that you can take responsibility for anything mathematics and science. I want you to be that mentor, that coach among our mathematics teachers. So leadership becomes the key. Leadership at the top and leadership at the middle management.
Yes. Now, a number of our headmasters and headmistresses and what's not have not received any sort of a formal training in school leadership.
They've
just come through the ranks, or they've been there for a very long time, and then they're appointed as school leaders.
Right.
And we feel that, being in the classroom and being a teacher in the classroom is perhaps the very same thing in managing a school. Although there might be some overlaps, it takes on a whole different sort of thing. You now have a whole school system to manage,
Yes.
which you might not just be equipped to do.
Hence the masters in educational leadership. That's the void we're trying to fill, because many of the principals today, they now have a bachelor's degree, but you know what, quite often they were good teachers. They were trained in English, they were trained in mathematics education, or even some other area, but because of being a good teacher or whatever reason, they have become a principal. So a master's in educational leadership is to help them. It's part of the continuing and professional education. Continuing and professional education is not just short courses. That's part of their continuing and professional education, to help them to be better leaders.
Yes.
in their schools. And one of the things I should say in doing this partnership with the college, we have proposed, out of any revenue that we get out of the program, to set up a fund for continuing and professional education, so that we don't want a situation where the School of Education just take all this money, or the CFBC just take a portion of the money, and it becomes just about profit making. How does it plow back into our education system? So we are setting up an education fund solely for continuing and professional education. It could be to help with coaching and mentoring, it could be to help with workshops, it could be with seminars, it could be that you have somebody who we think should go to a conference, whatever. But the point is, there's this fund that will be helping to uplift the educators in St. Kitts and Nevis.
Good. Now, the CFBC, back to CFBC, you, I understand, have a strategic plan for 5 years, in 2018 to 2023. If you could tell the audience what are some of the pillars of this plan, the objectives, and how do you hope to achieve them? Mr. Knight.
Well,
It's clear as day, right?
I think one of the initial things that we have to do is to assess how we are delivering the program right now. What do we have? What do we need? What are our resources, both physical and human resources? And currently at the college in teacher education, we have a very small staff of about how many?
15.
About 15, and that 15 includes adjunct lecturers. So that on the ground, it's really a very small number of lecturers. So we really need to assess what we have, the space that we have, what the requirements are, what the needs are, not just from our perspective of facilitating and delivering the program, but what are the needs of the students. Included in that, we have to again address the issue of mentoring, because the students, they come out of the program, they're finished. Very often we have situations in which the students do not finish the program, which means that over an extended period of time they're trying to complete courses.
Yes.
And what can we do to help these students, which of course is a particular difficulty, because while they're out there teaching, it's difficult for them to leave off to come to regular classes, which means again that you have to provide the facility or the availability of classes in the evening. We, in our program, in which we do the actual teaching practical, it means that we have to have assessors on the ground who will be able to teach, to assess both our student teachers as well as our lecturers who are out there facilitating the program. Because obviously, not because we have been in the program for some time and we are teaching, we're involved in teacher training, doesn't mean that we are always, on top of where we need to be, which means that we do need some evaluation, ourselves. So we have to be able to address the actual assessing of our faculty, our professors. And what we're attempting to do and encouraging throughout the entire college is not just in teacher education, but that all of our professors, our lecturers at the college actually do engage in some sort of program development, professional development, and so that they can get that assessing. We also need to be able to involve our stakeholders within the community to find out what are the needs in our business community, in our development community, whatever it is, so that we are able to provide the necessary training for persons coming out of the college. Again, this does not just lend itself to teacher education, but we need to be able to prepare all of our students to engage in employment. And we need to re-examine the overall teacher education program. The courses, the course outlines, are they relevant in today's paradigm? And are they delivering what they're supposed to deliver? When we look down some of the courses and we even see the title of the courses, and then we look down the course outline, sometimes we have to ask ourselves, is this really what it is supposed to be delivering? And are the teachers gaining anything out of it? Are they really development, or are they just going through emotion?
How do you evaluate all of that? What instrument do you have in place?
Well, we are developing the
evaluate
instrument. We are developing the instrument right now.
Okay.
There's no.
If I may, I would like to address the issue of evaluating the current teacher education program. I think it was in the joint board meeting in 2017, there was a cry for assessing the program, the overall teacher education program. And before that, at the CFBC, we needed to see what we were doing as a division, see where we were going, see what we were offering our students to look at the way forward. And so at the joint board, the issues were raised, and the joint board as well decided that it was time to look at the programs as well. But from our end in St. Kitts, we had already developed a concept paper done by Mr. Fitzroy who works with us at the Division of Teacher Education. And in that concept paper, we will be addressing the current status of the programs, what is needed, what is necessary. So he is at this point in time trying to develop some of those same evaluation instruments that will be needed to collect the data that will drive the process forward. So that is just one of the structures that we are putting in place for in terms of the strategic plan for 2018-2023. One of the other important thing that we are looking at from assessing what has been going on around us is the fact that our teachers go out there and we are not able to follow them the way that we should. We recognize from our standpoint at the college, at the Teacher Education Division, we are small in number, we cannot do it alone. However, we recognize the need to support or to provide that support structure. And for the last couple of years, I've been grappling with a way to get around it, because it is obvious that we need a mentoring program, not just for our students who leave us, but for students who just come into the system. Because when those students just come into the system, they have an induction program, which presently is going on right now.
Yes.
And after that induction program, the ministry has implemented a in-service training for them. But for us, that is not enough. Because when we teach or lecture our students to do certain things in terms of how to teach, the pedagogy,
Yes.
carrying out the art of teaching, what strategies to use, and then we go back out in the field and we look at them sometimes and we see, well, they have gone back, you know, to where they were before. They have not implemented the strategies that we have taught them. And it sort of sets us back in such a way that we see then that our students are now at a disadvantage. Not just the teachers, but the students. Because we are all working for that output where we want to see student success. Without that student success, community will measure us as not having done anything. And so we want to make sure that we put a mentoring structure in place for our teachers who leave us, so that we can ensure that they uphold the practices that they would have learned and transfer the learning into practice.
Sure.
And if I may add to that too, it's just yesterday I was at a meeting and the question was raised about the trained teachers and about their ability to proper questioning skills and to develop examinations. And someone as well, aren't they being taught that at the college? And that is the thing, they are being taught, they know how to do it, but when they get back out there, they're not really implementing what we teach to them. Another part of the difficulty is that with the teacher education program, the teacher training, we do get quite a contingent of students from NEFIS. So when they're doing their teaching practicum, because we don't have the facility and the resources in NEFIS, it means that they have to do the practicum in St. Kitts.
Yes.
So what happens now when they're done and they return to NEFIS? So we now have to also develop, you know, a way in which we can do that mentoring, you know, just across the water.
Yes.
And provide resources in NEFIS. Not necessarily that we have to be able to, you know, we would need to go over there, but that in itself is a problem.
Now, how does, you know, the teacher education program at the college acquaint students with the knowledge of the national education, the objectives education policy and philosophy, in terms of your curriculum, in terms of the national objectives for education and so on. I suppose the strategic plan addresses
Well,
all
it's
of that.
part of the strategic
part of the
plan.
strategic
But
plan.
additionally, in the course, in one of our core courses, which is professionalism, we do address the whole idea of curriculum. We do examine our own education policy of our white paper, as well as included in that is the social and cultural foundations of education, which addresses all of those issues. So it is part of an ongoing course which all of the students have to do.
And let me add that that course, Core 1001, Teacher Professionalism, was actually developed by the Division of Teacher Education because we saw the need to provide that basis for them. When teachers come in, they're usually, lost in terms of what is
Yes.
it that the country needs, what is it we are supposed to do when we go out into the classrooms, what are the laws and the legal implications of certain things, and so that course was designed specifically for that purpose.
Now, for example, the reason I asked that question is because countries have certain needs in terms of where they want to go, in terms of their national development, economic development, and all of that. And now you're hearing a lot about focus on a STEM education, science, technology, engineering, and math, and all that sort of a thing. So I was just wondering, how does teacher education, how does the whole fit into the whole education policy? I don't know if you
Well,
get what I'm...
Yes, I see the point. Programs should not be developed to serve themselves. They should be developed to serve the people. So I can say right now what we are doing in the School of Education. We have an online survey that's going right across the Eastern Caribbean with present students, past students, immediate past students. And we're hearing from them. We're hearing about the programs that they did. Basically, we're trying to revise the revision that you're talking about. Revise the program, bearing in mind the things that they're saying to us. But we've gone a bit further. We have surveyed education officials in the ministries. So we're hearing from them also. We are hearing from the principals. So we're hearing from various stakeholders as to what's going on in education and how we can address this. We're even looking at a big study, and we did. St. Kitts is one of the countries in the study. St. Kitts, Grenada, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Barbados, Antigua. And we're looking to see what are the factors that affect student achievement in primary and secondary school. Because if you get a sense of those factors that are affecting student achievement, you get a sense as to what are the type of things you need to put into your programs, right? And this is a multi-pronged study. So we're surveying teachers, principals, students, ministry officials, and then we are doing qualitative interviews with them and so forth. And then we'll involve some other stakeholders to get a sense of things. So we're thinking that we can't just develop a program by just sitting down, 3 people, and develop. By talking to the ministry officials, we're hearing about the education policies, the directions they want to go. So we're thinking about national need. And so it's a ticklish thing because you're building programs not for one country, but for several countries. So you have to do it in such a way that even though St. Kitts is and Nevis is delivering it, they can deliver it within a context without, so they can make a number of the examples about St. Kitts and Nevis. They can bring it home to what's happening in the classroom without affecting a general regional education, and then they can tie it to what is happening in other regions. So education policies must inform what we do. But I believe strongly that we have to get information from the top down, but we also have to get information from the bottom
Yes,
up.
yes,
So
yes,
more
yeah.
interactive
Sure,
approach I'm
sure.
taking. So you get in
Top down, bottom up.
bottom up, yes.
Okay. Now we have to go to the phone lines. This is also a call-in program, so we are going to open the phone lines. You can put your headphones on. Well, you know. And the numbers to call, the local number is 465-2555. That's the local number. And the overseas number is 1718-577-2916. That is 1718-577-2916. We welcome your calls. No one is on the line as yet, so we can continue our discussion. The challenges. I'm back to the youngest person on the panel. Mr. Davoren.
His songs very mature though. And I have to say, if I may interrupt, that this is a testament, in my opinion, of the CFBC.
Yes,
because this young man is so articulate and so seemed to be so well informed that I don't think that came from nowhere. I must say.
And he was a very good student.
Right.
You know, I mean,
He came with it also.
Yes, I'm sure he came with that.
And he did
being
extremely
articulate,
well.
but he sounds very informed. That's
Right. Now, Mr. Davoren, what are some of the challenges that you encounter in the classroom? Well, what are some of the challenges, the major challenges that you encountered in the classroom?
Well, I would have to say the challenges are really before, because I haven't really returned permanently to the classroom post
see, yeah.
teachers and so. But the challenges before, and I feel that I'm sort of anxious to return to the classroom to see how I will deal with these challenges, having been, gone through the process of teacher training. I would say one of the main challenges as it relates to the learning process is the vast differences you see in children. I think that's a really big challenge. Differences in personality, differences in preference, differences in behavior, differences in articulation, just a vast difference. And as the teacher, you are now tasked with disseminating information, or, well, not disseminating information anymore, but facilitating the learning process where students learn differently, students understand different things, students have different preferences. Because if you have a student who prefers something over the next, but you are teaching for the next, right, then that student is almost turned off, or they aren't as tuned in as they would like to, because it's not what they prefer. And so you as the teacher now, you have to sort of make an assessment of your students in the classroom so that you can go in prepared to reach each child. And I find that is the biggest challenge for me in the classroom, because ultimately I want all students to learn. I want all students to do well. But it's almost like, like a jigsaw puzzle. Like, if I do this, I may capture this 19 students, but I may lose 9 of them. But if I do this, I may capture 17 and I may lose. You see the conundrum. So the challenge is, how can I capture all students? How can I get their preferences? How can I get their differences in learning style and everything else? And that was the challenge then. So I'm really eager to return to see how best I will be able to capture all of the students.
Mm-hmm. I would like to know how teacher training can instill in the student a love of teaching. That must be one of the most challenging things.
Well, it's good when you come into the profession wanting to be in the profession.
Yes.
But the reality is, it's not everybody that comes into the profession want to be in the profession. Many people end up in the profession having decided to be there just for an academic year. So I think for you to get that love of teaching, it is really quite often dependent on what happens with the facilitators at the Teachers College.
Okay.
If you're a good facilitator, good lecturer at the Teachers College, you should do your job so well that your young wards, your teachers want to emulate you. You have to do this thing in a way that you lead by example. You know, we all went to Teachers College, and one of the things from back in my day that always amused me is that some lecturers would say to you, oh, you must plan. I remember at one point, those days it was an integrated lesson. And I went through college and I'm hearing about this integrated lesson. But I'd never seen an integrated lesson during the teaching, the person teaching me. I had not seen it. I had only seen some things on paper about
Yes.
what it should look like. So when you step into the classroom, you really did not know what it means to produce an integrated
Yes.
thing. So I'm saying the lecturers have to be models themselves, and they have to be passionate about it, and they have to do such a good job that the student teachers want to emulate and want to be like that person, and feel that the only place I want to be is in a classroom, you know. So it's really dependent on the people who are teaching the teachers.
I can't imagine a musician, you know, who does not sing with feeling. Can you imagine?
Yeah.
How many fans will that musician have?
That's right.
You know?
You'd be surprised.
Really? Is there anything else you wanted to say about the strategic plan? Because some of I felt they you know, you had more.
Yeah, I wanted to, and I know that I wanted to go through the objectives really, the overall objectives for teacher education, which we are trying to ensure that we meet, rather than just going through the motions. And if you permit me to just read them off, and there are 5 objectives here. First one is promoting information communication technology for lifelong learning, and it's really important, information communication technology. And it's interesting because we have the technology, but how do we communicate and learn with the technology, and how do we use it actually for the facilitation of our teacher education? The second one is ensuring equitable access for all teacher educators and teacher trainees. The third one, facilitating education and training for teacher educators, developing and promoting open education resources, teaching spaces and varying platforms for delivery of courses. And of course we know that part of the teaching spaces, as we said, is basically cyberspace, and building human resource capacity. And that of course again is not just in terms of the teachers, but in terms of the learners, to the student learners. So those are the main objectives that we are trying to achieve.
You think you're achieving them?
We are attempting to do so. You know, nothing is perfect, and there's a lot of work to be done. There really is a lot of work to be done. But part of the thing is that people have to be on board. We can't push back before we try to do something. And I know whenever we meet and we discuss these things and we say, you know, this is what we want to do, immediately persons sometimes react and they go, you are wasting your time. That's never going to happen. But if we take that approach and that attitude, we will never really be able to achieve, you know, much of anything.
Yes. Dr.
Yeah,
Warrican.
I mean, I like the one about this equitable access, right? Because access is really important. We know when we think about access, quite often we think just about the students, but so you want to see all the primary school student in primary school, secondary school age, secondary schools. The young graduate, you want to see them in college. But what do you want to see of your teachers? You want to see them continually building themselves, continually developing and growing.
Yes.
And so that access is important. That access can come in the form of short courses. It can come in the form of degreed programs and so forth. And that, I think that is one of the things that the School of Education and the CFBC, that's what we're thinking in terms of the programming thrust that we're going to have.
Sure.
Where the bachelor's will be accessible on the ground, the postgraduate diploma on the ground, and then the master's program, we come here and we deliver as the program that is delivered at K-Field.
Yes.
Now, we know we haven't spoken costs, but to run a master's program, it has a cost to it. But I can say to you that what we are thinking about charging is nothing in comparison to what any of the international universities that are offering programs in these Caribbean spaces are doing.
Sure.
We are talking about, and excuse me for using the US currency here in the
That's
Eastern
okay, go
Caribbean.
right ahead, we'll convert.
Yes, it is $8,500 for masters in education. Where if you look at anything coming out of North America, with Phoenix or any of these universities or the UK, quite often it is 2 times or 3 times the price. So we're trying to make it affordable. And the thing that we want to do is to have a payment plan in place. So we're thinking that this is a master's that would run a span of say 15 months, so 4 semesters, including a summer semester. And we don't want to have a situation where people have to be paying this big set of money one time. So at the start, we'd work out with the college what could be a good amount that you can pay to show your commitment to the program. And then every month, you pay something to the program. And at the end, similar to how when you're buying a car these days, at the end, well, I don't know if that concept is here, but in Barbados, you have something called a balloon payment.
Yes.
So you pay something up front, you pay monthly, and when you get to the end, you make a balloon payment to complete the thing.
Right.
So we stagger it over the 15-month period so that it is not as burdensome as it possibly can be. So that's what we're thinking about.
Now, one of the questions that people have, or some people might have, why do a master's in education spend all of this money and teachers are not poorly paid?
Well, I don't know anything about the payment
Unless
in
you're going to teach at UWI, right?
I'm gonna leave that outside of the house.
Okay.
Yes, I don't know what salaries are in St. Kitts, and I mean globally there's always the issue of salary and so forth. Is it enough and so forth? But again, it comes down to passion. And it comes down to what it means to be a teacher.
Yes.
So if you want to be a teacher, this is not for everybody. You know, teaching is not for everybody.
It isn't.
If you want to be a teacher, it means that you have assessed the playing field. You know what salaries are going to be, and you're in this. So if you want to be in it, then you still have to think now about upgrading yourself. You don't want to be at the same level all the time. One of the biggest discontent with many professionals is when they see a young person comes into the profession and they're moving quite fast.
Yes.
And they're moving quite fast because they've educated themselves, you know? And you don't want to be left behind. And you're not doing degrees just for the sake of salaries and so forth. You're doing it for your own personal
That's
development.
correct.
But I do understand the concern, because the reality of life sometimes come down to
That is
what's
correct.
in your pocket. So
Bread and butter.
I'm not minimizing that. But I'm just saying, if you're in the profession, sometimes you'll have to look past that and see how is this thing going to affect me personally. When I go home, what am I going home with? The knowledge I have. You know, when I face my students, what am I facing them with? Because it helps you to grow as a person, and that is what we're trying to do.
Right. So you're not just in it, like some, for the summer vacation.
That's it. And,
Right.
and UWI is not just in it for the School of Education is not in it just for the money.
Right.
Because I'm saying there are other taught masters coming out of our same university that you will pay at least $15,000 US. But it's because we recognize the clientele. We recognize that we're talking about teachers, why we have negotiated that it will not be the most burdensome cost. So we're talking about half the price, as if you were doing a third master's on
Sure,
one of the campuses.
Mr. Williams, I would just like to add that to the question why a master's. For us here in St. Kitts, the ministry is thinking of developing the career path for teachers. And so this is an excellent move in terms of teachers being able to track where they would like to be. You understand? So, for example, if Mr. Davoren, who is now finishing with an associate degree, if he would like to continue along this track, he can do the bachelor's and then he can do the master's program right here in St. Kitts, you know, with no additional cost in terms of economic costs that he will have to think of if he travels overseas. So one of the most important things is that teachers now have to look at the career path if they have that passion and they would want to remain in teaching and not just remain in the classroom but become an administrator, then the master's is it.
And there's an advantage to doing a master's with us, yeah?
Yeah.
The master's courses are the same complement of courses in the PhD program. So after your master's, if you decide to upgrade now to a PhD, you don't have to do a new set of courses. All you have to do is your dissertation.
Okay, good.
Yes. So you're well on the way towards a PhD,
PhD.
if you so wish.
Sure. Okay. Now I have one last question because we're out of time. What are the training requirements for students coming into the program at the college?
For teachers, the general requirements are 5 CSEC. They must have 5 CSEC subjects. For the early childhood and the primary, they must have mathematics, and everybody must have English. Let me just say that. For the early childhood and the primary, they must have a science, social studies, history or geography, and math, of course. And math is a challenge for most of our students. Okay? And we, in previous years, the college used to seek to help the students in terms of giving them provisional access to the program. And so they would admit them to the program without math on condition that they would get the math. Because without that math, UWI will not issue you a certificate. Okay, so you must have math. So now we no longer do provisional acceptance because we want to eliminate those programs. So we are saying those persons who want to come into teacher education, you must have that math to come in with, science, social studies, history, social studies, or whichever, and any other. For the secondary programs, they must have 2 units at K in the major, and they must have a unit, I think, in the minor. This last year, the joint board made a decision to sort of change the requirements for the secondary applicants, because we recognize that there are a number of persons in our schools who would not have 2 units in the area for the minor. And so some adjustments were made to that to accommodate them. We have a lot of teachers out there who need to come in for training, but because of the requirements, there was a hindrance. Then for the Tibet areas, you must have mathematics. There it comes again, that mathematics. You must have mathematics and 5 subjects, and also the area of specialization, where the home management, where you can do clothing and textile, food and nutrition, home management, and then you have the industrial arts. I must say though that these programs, the home management, industrial arts, they are the least populated in the college. We have a very low enrollment for those programs. We are seeking to market the programs in such a way that we will get the teachers coming in to do these programs, because we are talking about Tibet, and our teachers need to be trained in that area. So we are trying to get the teachers to come in that area. For the postgrad, all you need is your degree in that area of specialization or 24 credits I think, for that area of specialization to access the postgraduate in secondary education. And
But
for
you must
that,
have your degree
you must,
because it's
yes.
a postgrad.
For that, we offer the postgrad in the areas of mathematics, science, English, business, social studies, geography, and history.
Okay. Is there anything that you would like to say before we leave? Any of you?
Well, my thing is just to thank you for inviting us and thank the listening public, and just to remind the people of the value of a good education. I believe that it is the way for healthy living, for economic success, and for a healthy society.
Yes.
You know, an educated society is a healthy society. So we cannot devalue education. If you value education, then you cannot devalue teacher education, because it's the teachers who are helping you to access that education.
It's a healthy, and you forget one thing, a wealthy.
Well,
Also.
yes. So thank you very much, and we hope that the teachers, the educators will come out and support themselves by doing a master's in education. See the value in it. It is reasonably priced, because we thought about you, the teacher, you, the principal. We had you in mind. We didn't want to overprice price this, and so just see it as an opportunity. You don't have to leave St. Kitts and Nevis. You can do it here, and you're getting the same quality masters as you would have done if you had to leave to go to any of the campus, where you would then have to pay room and board and triple your financial.
And AFA and all that.
Yes.
I just want to say, well, before I leave, I want to fully endorse the teacher education program at the Clarence Fitzroy Bryant College, because I was one who was skeptical about going to teachers ed. And you know, I taught for 4 years before, and I had many success stories, and I felt, you know, I was doing well. There's not much I would have learned what I needed to over the 4 years. That was quickly dispelled when I went to teachers college, because I learned so much, a wealth of information, and I feel that our teachers need to be equipped with the requisite skills for teaching. And so I know there are so many teachers out there like me who are skeptical about coming to teachers ed. It's one of the best decisions I've made as it relates to educating myself and improving myself as a teacher. So I want those who are listening to come on out at teachers ed, and you know, just try it and do your best. It's not going to be a waste of time, and they're going to learn a lot, definitely.
Okay, well, I want to thank all of you very much. Mr. Knight, my dear cousin, Mrs. Pennyfeather, the Dean, Dr. Warrican,
yes.
Thank you. I know you're a very busy man. Thank you for taking the time to come.
Thank you.
And Eustace, my former student, who is now my teacher, right? I want to thank all of you for listening to today's program. Today we were discussing a very important topic, and that is the importance of our teachers being trained, educated, and that they are involved in ongoing formation. I am your host, Roy Williams. Next week we will be back for another Working for You program. Until then, take care.
Working for you. a weekly talk radio program which highlights developments of national interest and the activities of your St. Kitts Nevis government. Join host Roy Williams as he presents news, views, reports, and interviews about everything regarding the activities of the Team Unity government and the building of our communities and the development of St. Kitts Nevis. Tune in and call in to interact with your government and share your views regarding the upward forward development of your community and our beautiful Twin Island Federation. Working for you is weekly, every Wednesday live from 1:30 p.m. to 3 p.m. on ZIZ Radio, Win FM, and Sugar City FM with rebroadcast on participating stations. Working for you.